Ignore that howling in the distance. It's Uncle Says. Welcome to Uncle Says, a weekly podcast discussion of what it's like to make short videos for YouTube from China. I am your host, Emily, and with me, as always, is Peter.
As always.
He's also your host. We are coming to you live to tape from beautiful whoopwu Studios in Luzhou, Sichuan, China. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. And today our homeschool film school discussion is going to be about considering your audience. But first, let's check in with how's your uncle? So it's been a interesting week. I was sick last weekend, which is why we
2 weeks.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of time to cover. I was sick last weekend, which is why we did not broadcast last weekend. And then I spent a lot of this week just recovering from that. But also Peter and I have been just like doing a lot of thinking and working and filming and everything. Next week here in China, it is, and in lots of places around the world, it is Labor Day. May 1st is Labor Day for most of the world except the United States. So I'm going to have a nice vacation coming up. It's interesting here in China, they do this thing where like if a holiday is near a weekend, then they will switch around the weekdays and weekend working days. So for example, and this one's complicated because May 1st is Wednesday, so they have taken this Sunday and the following Sunday and made those work days so that then we can take off Thursday and Friday. It's really complicated, but they're always looking to make a good block of time off without actually giving you that much time off. But, you know, some time off is better than no time off, and it'll be nice to have essentially a 4 or 5 day weekend. So
it's efficient to somebody.
It's not efficient, but it's nice. I think our plan for that time is to work on our stuff, which is always my plan. And my colleagues are always like, "So what are you doing with your vacation?" "Oh, I'm working on my real job. I'm working on my art." But yeah, so that's sickness and vacation, the stuff of life.
Champions.
What else is going on? It's really hot.
Really hot. We've hit spring. We bought a new ice cube tray.
Yeah, we got a new ice cube tray. So we've been making iced coffee, which is really delicious. I'm not a coffee drinker normally, but I like the iced coffee.
But it's definitely
big
gotten warm enough.
News.
It's gotten warm enough now where all the air conditioners are on everywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
We're officially in summer, I would say. I mean, not on a calendar, but
2 weeks ago when we talked to you about this, it was Luzhou spring, nice and warm, cool breezes, nice days. Now, actual Luzhou spring is like super hot and sweaty all the time. It's so humid. I don't know if I can describe to you how humid is.
Never saw it in the States, not Florida.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, I thought I knew what humid was, but I had no idea.
It's like Brazil hot.
So that's what we're living with. But we have some good air conditioners, so I don't know. That's enough weather talk. Let's go on to business. Conducting business.
Conducting business is located somewhere.
Oh, I just named it business.
It's named business. It's commentary, it's watch, it's closing.
I might have forgot to load that bumper. I'm sorry.
Business!
Again, our program that we use to live stream is OBS, which is a free program, and it's as a free program, you know, it enables us to do stuff we couldn't do otherwise, but
For free?
Because of a bug in it, I have to load up the bumpers fresh every week. Otherwise, they stutter stop when we play them back.
Because we're not live, but we're live to tape.
Yeah, and it would be nice if we could just like have the setup and not have to touch it. But every week I have to like start from scratch because it's free.
Woo! Business.
So that's an endorsement and non-endorsement of this particular program. But our real business is we hit a couple milestones in the past 2 weeks. The big one is 𝗖𝗵𝚴𝗾𝗶, our main vlog YouTube channel, hit 100 subscribers. We're now at
104 as today.
104 as of today, which also, it's a nice round number, but it also means we get to claim our custom URL. So you can go to youtube.com/c/𝗖𝗵𝚴𝗾𝗶, and that's us. Which makes our really exciting.
Our second channel to have its own URL.
Yes.
That's 200s.
Yeah. So that's exciting. And then we also had a video break the 400 view mark, which is
first
across all the channels a record. Yeah. It's our channel trailer. Is that the one? What's it like for Hello Uncle Foreigner?
What living in China is like for Hello Foreigner.
Yeah, so it's really exciting to cross 400 views.
Yeah, we're starting to enter the small time.
Yeah, the small time. And then this is somewhat convoluted, but because I was sick last week, and in that time we finished posting all of our old videos. We have a backlog of like 9 videos that we have not talked about yet, and rather than cram them all into this episode, when we get to commentary later in the episode, we're going to just address a few each episode for the next couple weeks. So
we'll give each one of them their loving morsel due.
Yeah, if you're following along, all the old videos from last year are now up on Hello Foreigner YouTube. And we will continue to talk about them for the next couple weeks.
In our lives.
Yeah. if you're us, because that's the only people who cared so deeply about these details, we're still going to be talking about old material for the next couple weeks, even though we are not, all the old material is out for public consumption. But that also feels really good to get that project finished.
An easy reference for you, the viewer.
Yeah. Because we knew it was going to take a long time to get through, to just the sheer volume of posting like 70 videos.
We initially planned it to take about 6 months.
Well, yeah. And then Peter has been doing the lion's share of promotion of all of that, and he's said he's gotten to a point where he's like, I'm tired of promoting every day.
Sick of playing the huckster.
Yeah. Which does not mean he's going to stop promoting, but now we only have 1 video a week to promote, which is
except for 3 channels, which each has their own each week.
So we have 3 videos a week.
We're down to 3.
We're down to 3. But would you say, I mean, I would make this assumption, but you're the one actually doing it, because they are kind of different category of video, like one's a vlog, one's a podcast, one's a music video, does that lessen your feeling of wearing out your welcome at all?
Yeah, well, the music one is a little easier, I think, because it's easier to like tune in a video. We're also like trying to pimp out SoundCloud too, which is both the music channel and the talk show channel, vidcast. Which the vidcast, I don't know how to promote this yet, but I'm hoping with podcasting we'll start to figure out where do we find an audience. I mean, this is talking about quasi, not film. We're not doing an Avengers review this weekend, but like that's got to be a little bit easier. Music it's kind of almost throwaway, but in that sense it makes it a little easier to find views. It's the main vlog one that's the main work, because that's where we put most of our work into. So that takes a heck of a lot of work, because you really want to find a good home. Whereas like a music video is kind of like, I don't know, it takes me like an hour or two to put together after the music's done.
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of like drop that into a few places. Like it's a song, you either like it or you don't. Name it electronica, name it classical, name it punk, whatever, and then let it fly. But that, and then this, trying to figure out how to promote this, I haven't even really attempted, so we'll find out how what does 3 add up to in the long run.
Yeah. Which, speaking of this as a podcast, if you're watching us on YouTube right now and you wish that you were just listening to us, you can subscribe to our RSS feed. We'll put a link in the description. Or if you are a Stitcher consumer, I don't know what Stitcher does really. If you consume your podcasts via Stitcher, we are on there, so I'll put that link in there too. We are, as of yet, still not on iTunes. I think it's a mystery to me how that works, but they have not gotten back to me. But we are a podcast, so if you want to take us with you on the go, you can subscribe to our podcast in one of those 2 ways. Or you can always join us here on the YouTube feed.
And you can listen to the music there also.
On SoundCloud.
On SoundCloud.
Not the RSS feed though.
Right.
So I'll label all those links in the description below.
It's out of control.
But let's move on to Homeschool Film School.
Homeschool Film School is right here.
Artists have to consider their audience, especially if you're making something somewhat commercial. You have to think like who wants this, who would pay money for this, even hopefully, and
or who do we have to pay to watch it?
Yeah, and there's a lot of advice out there that sounds like marketing speak of like, that's the way like anyone developing something commercially for sale thinks about, like you have to profile who the audience you think you're making your work for, and you just have to think about the audience. It's not just pure art creation, and part of me is like, but I just want to make art. But I was thinking of earlier today, like even as old as like the 1400s in Italy, if you were an artist back then and the Medicis had all the money, I bet a lot of artists were all of a sudden really interested in Catholic saints, so they could get a little bit of that sweet, sweet Medici coin. So it's not a new thing. It's always been part of the job, unless you're like pure outsider art, and there's a reason it's called outsider art.
You might not be worried about money too much in that case.
And Peter and I have had multiple discussions, and changing discussions as it should be, over who we are aiming for. And I think right now our ideal audience is you. But we started out kind of targeting the China vlog market. But
you need a niche.
Yeah, you need a niche. But that niche is really too small. It's a couple thousand people, but that's nothing in the terms of like.
There's a couple thousand uploads every minute to YouTube.
Yeah. There's, I think, like millions of minutes of content uploaded every second. So our sites right now are set on maybe. I mean, everybody wants younger people, because I think younger people are not going to die.
They're also the ones watching YouTube.
Yeah, and also Peter and I are somewhat of a quirky style, and we want people who are open to stuff that is challenging to them and stuff that is maybe a little not mainstream, and that tends to be, I think, younger viewers.
Well, even just the age group of like our friends are all a certain age where there's families and responsibilities, and even though a lot of them are artists, they don't really have time to sit around watching YouTube.
Yeah. So we need people with free time, we need people with open minds to weirdness, and also kind of people who are curious about the greater world around them. Maybe they haven't traveled in their life, but they wish that they could. Because our as we keep going forward, our stories aren't specifically China-based. we're hoping you don't have to know a lot about China to find something in what we're doing that connects with you. But it is the underlying motivation of our channel is like, what is it like to live in a culture that's different from your own and try to engage with that. And so you kind of have to be open to engaging with another culture, which sadly, not everybody is these days. So we're hoping to reach those people who are.
Yeah, we're hoping that like our China being sort of a metaphor for, and the name Hello Foreigner doesn't necessarily mean, hey, get used to China. It's like if you feel like you want to see the world as something bigger than your own hometown, than what you know, it's something to invite different point of views. Yeah.
If you're actively looking for a different point of view, we hope that you'll like us.
It turns out we're not finding that in the China vlog realm.
Well, yeah, I would say it was surprising to figure out because, you know, I think everybody has this assumption of like, well, most people are like me. And so we figured most people who've come to China are like us in that they just like came with no agenda and are kind of like, well, what's going to happen over here? And, you know, this is not every person who comes to China, but there's a lot of, I don't want to get too into it, but there's a lot of like very specific agendas being represented in the China vlogging world, and we don't really want to have anything to do with that discussion.
Yeah.
But how does that translate into how we make our work, I think is very interesting, because Peter and I, we just had a big disagreement over in terms of like accessibility, that this latest video we put up, I mean, Peter was saying this is the most accessible video that we have, and
I know it's all fake.
Yeah, I agree with that from one perspective, but from another perspective, in terms of how I've gone about creating these, I feel like in the last couple months, my writing goal has been to not think about the audience so much, to think about me, which is really interesting that that's resulting in stuff that is more accessible to a greater audience. But like, to me, my compulsion is to over-explain and to write you a 2,000-word essay on exactly my opinion and how I got there and the supporting evidence. And it's not that interesting to read back, I will admit, but it like, I can get my point across, and then it is like, why am I reading this for 5 hours? And so it's not the most compelling way to approach the work. So for me, my challenge has been to put a thought out there and let it just be and not worry about the justification. I mean, it's not skip the logic altogether. There's still the internal logic of working through a thought, but not presenting all my arguments and just letting that sit with the audience, which in one respect to me feels like I'm not thinking about the audience at all. I'm not worried about how you get to where I got to. I just want to show you where I am. But I guess on the other hand, functionally, that does leave more room for the audience to meet me somewhere rather than be lectured at and dragged along on my journey. Does that make any sense?
I feel that you're getting more to where you're more generous to the viewer of like you're saying, let them sort of put together some of the pieces rather than give them here's the points of why you should be interested in whatever subject you're talking about. Here's the history behind these. Not that those things aren't important, but maybe in the idea of a vlog, of YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not sure why the format of know-it-all is so important at the moment on YouTube, but it's exhausting to sit there and watch 45 minutes of you tell me anything other than academically about China, of like maybe if you're teaching me about local dialect, that, and I wanted to learn it, that would be something that I want an hour-long lecture on. But like you telling me, you know, your feelings about the Avengers this week doesn't really help me at all. So what you're doing by giving me a little piece of this is my life, and it just happens to be in China, gives me more of a doorway into some kind of human condition rather than some kind of explaining like I didn't know. Like tell me what I don't know and then give me the key to go figure it out myself. It's more interesting to me.
Right. Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. And let's give a concrete example to take this out of the realm of theory. So for this week, we had a little segment about the Burger King that opened in Luzhou, and it opened last summer. And there's like so much I could say about the history of this particular Burger King and the Luzhou expat reaction to it, and like how we've all been passing back and forth these like excited, I went to the Burger King, oh yay, I went to, like there's a whole...
The opening like took like a year of hidden messages back and forth.
Yeah. And like everyone would be like, I drove by and there's workers inside there. And so there is like, there could be an hour-long piece about the opening of this Burger King, but who cares? You don't need that context.
I mean, that'd be weird to have back home.
Yeah.
If there was a new Burger King opening up in Long Island,
right,
what do you do? Call me when it's open, and then I'll go there and scarf down a burger, and I don't care.
Right, and where the particulars to this situation where there is like an aspect of weirdness to all these Western chains opening up in our small Chinese city, which is, I mean, this is all over the world, and that's part of what's weird about it, is that the like American corporate culture is just everywhere. It's astonishing. But you already know some of that story, so I kind of just, like, I need to remind you of that, but I don't need to, like, I'm not breaking news that Burger King is everywhere.
Burger King exists?
Yeah. And it, like, part of what's interesting about living in Luzhou is that we're on the precipice of, like, when we got here, there was already a McDonald's and a Kentucky Fried Chicken because... Kentucky Fried Chicken, if you don't know this, is really popular in China. But for the most part, like, Luzhou has a smaller prefecture level city. We didn't have a lot of amenities in general, and then Western brands specifically weren't here, and now they are. Now they're coming.
H&M, Toys R Us, Starbucks.
Yeah. And so we're on... That's the important part, is that we're watching that change happen. And then the other important part is, like, I could dissect for you the meal that we had and what was unsatisfying about it. But you know, if you go out to fast food, there's a hit of, like, yeah, French fries. And then you just feel, like, greasy afterwards. I'm not down on fast food. We went there, not ironically. We went there because we were like, we haven't had Burger King in a while.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's not that good. So, I mean, there was so much, I'm telling you so much more about Burger King in Luzhou right now than we did in the video. It's just like 3 sentences, I think.
This format right here is dedicated to long-winded conversation of us an experience of really when we put together for a vlog is to try to get that down to like a 30-second shot of like, guess what? Burger King's also in our little small town. Didn't used to be. It is now. Still tastes the same. Fine, move on.
Yeah, and you know, part of me still needs you to know all this stuff about it, or we wouldn't be having this behind-the-scenes chat. But I think that's letting go. Here's where it is that my writing journey is letting go of what I need the audience reaction to be. And so for me, that feels like over the course of the past couple of months that our video has gone from very high consideration of the audience to low consideration of the audience, specifically in the area of writing. So when you were saying like this is the most accessible, audience-friendly work that we've done, that's where I was like, what is it? Because in my process, that my thought of the audience has changed, but that's because you and I kind of have different functions in how these videos come together, which I think is really interesting.
Certainly, like of course I'm biased because we're living this together and we're writing this in terms of I'm interpreting what you're writing in a visual sense, so that storytelling aspect. But in a way, like I'm like the first line of getting your story, and this is like the story has become far more streamlined. Where I'm like looking at this, like I feel more included, slightly being apart from like if you're giving me like esoteric ideas that I'm like, well, how do I put that into some kind of visual sense? How do I storyboard this? Where if you're giving me esoteric ideas that like I'm interpreting, then I'm like thinking of shapes and colors, and whereas in now the story is more like, okay, well, even the fact like this one has a scripted piece in it, like we're going to set ourselves up, I need this location, and like it's closer to something that people can easily recognize this is a scene, as opposed to it's, you know, some kind of emotion, some kind of there's a closer to a linear narrative rather than like floating ideas.
Yeah, and I would say, as I did say, and if you want an example of kind of what Peter's talking about in terms of that more impressionistic feel, I guess let's say, why do you live in China? That's another one we're going to talk about later during commentary. But that it's just different clips surprising, or featuring me in surprising situations with a voiceover going, "What are you doing?" And it is definitely non-narrative, more impressionistic, and you know, we feel proud of both kinds of those pieces of work, both the more kind of mainstream accessible and this impressionistic 5-minute collage piece style. But I feel like that impressionism informs what we're doing now. Would you say?
Yeah, I think it's helped develop our style, finding our voice. Like it makes more sense in compacting that in a way that is more accessible. Like it I mean, you could say like I don't know, it's hard to like think about somebody like Tim Burton as a kid must have been drawing swirls and stripes, and people are just looking at him and like, I don't know, is there a problem with this child or something? Now it's such a visual thing that if you see a swirl on a movie poster, you're like, is this a Tim Burton movie?
Right.
So like extracting the voice of whatever it is, the sounds that we're using, even Luzhou itself. I mean, to most of our viewers, if you're not in China, and even if sometimes if you are in China, if you're in the big city, Luzhou is an abstract idea, and we're trying to tell you what Luzhou is like and what it's like for us to live in it. So there's a certain amount of like, we have to invite people in, as opposed to let's just show them somebody selling oranges. Like, that's great, they sell oranges. Like, I mean, it's cool. We can go right outside of our building and buy oranges.
Right.
But to give that more context it's difficult, and I think we're actually, I hope, getting to that point.
Yeah, well, and I would say, and I don't think we were ever deliberately alienating, which both of us, I feel like, when we were younger, wanted to make art that was deliberately alienating. That's like a 20-year-old's impulse, I think.
The more punky of us that wanted to like kick it in your face.
Yeah, you don't get it good. Yeah. Like an example
Get out here, old man!
I did study abroad in Spain when I was in college, and I wanted to write a screenplay that was bilingual in Spanish and English, but no subtitles. You better know Spanish and you better know English. And my sister was like, well, that's great and really ambitious, but you realize, like, no one's going to go see that movie. You've severely limited your audience that way. And, like, we're not trying to artificially limit our audience, especially because, our point of view has already done that for us.
Yeah.
So we do want to be as accessibly weird as we can. And so that also... And some of it is stuff like I'm saying, we were never trying to be deliberately alienating, but there has been stuff of, like, we just didn't translate certain stuff because either we knew it so well that it didn't occur to us, like, we would need to have clarifying subtitles, or we just, like, didn't have time. Because there was, at one point, an ambition to have every video bilingual translated and subtitled, but that...
It's tough to do even in your own language. There's, especially with something like humor, is at what point during the process of actually trying to put something together and present it, do you realize, hopefully you do and you can fix it, but sometimes you don't, that, like, that was an in-joke. Like, I forgot to tell everybody that, like, oh, you should have been there, kind of like thing. Like, if you, it's funnier if you were there.
Right.
Like, oh, well, great. I wasn't though, so you shouldn't show me that.
Yeah. And stuff like we structured a joke around the 𝗣𝗵𝗴, which is an official receipt that you can use for tax purposes, reimbursement, paycheck. Blah, 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 blah. It's so boring. And the running joke is that, like, I keep, in our real life, Peter and I keep trying to tell Peter about, like, my misadventures collecting 𝗣𝗵𝗴s, and he's just like, it's so boring. Please don't tell me about it.
It's the worst part of an RPG game, of, like, you wandering around picking up chops.
Yeah,
and then presenting to me with, like, I've got 6 chops. Now we can almost buy a sword.
Yeah.
Like, call me when I buy a sword.
Yeah. But so part of what's written into... this week's fiction scene is a discussion of 𝗣𝗵𝗴, and we realized, like, and I think when we wrote the scene, we were like, China people will really get this, and then we wrote that scene in February, and now it's up now. Between that time, we kind of realized, like, oh yeah, we do want to appeal to more than just, like, China people, and so we have to explain what 𝗣𝗵𝗴 is. So we just put a little title in at the bottom, and I think, it lets you in on that joke enough to, like, laugh at how silly we are, I hope.
I would think that one of the few things that Westerners might know about China, other than the wall or something like that, is that there's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of bureaucracy in any country. Particularly, it's specialized here.
Yeah. Because I think that's... part of our mission as we see it is to find the relatable part of our everyday, but our everyday is different in China than it was in the US, and so there is, like, some jokes you are going to need a little supplemental information to understand and relate to, but I think we can present enough information that you can, in our strange situations, find something to relate to.
Bill, that's our job as storytellers. Like, if we can't do that, then we have to figure out how to do that, because, like any kind of communication, I mean, art is important for that way. Like, I feel this one way. If you just, like, look at it and say that's weird, then, like, we don't set out, like you were saying earlier, we don't set out to do something weird.
Right.
It's just through our experience, through our education, all the different venues, we perceive something a different way and then interpret it. And if we don't do a good job at that, then we're just showing you, like, scribbly drawings that don't make any sense to anybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's our job to give you some kind of context so that you can be in on the joke. We don't want to be exclusive.
Yeah, which is... it's interesting to see that come together in that we do... so I'll give you this. We do think of the audience in terms of editing and packaging the stories. But in terms of conceiving and writing the initial idea, what has freed me up is to not think about them, to only think of me, to only think of what I want to say.
Do you think that's possible, that has made you more human?
Maybe.
If you're not putting yourself in some kind of, like, I'm putting on, I mean, you do it with the giraffe deliberately to both come out of your shell and hide behind a shell, to be able to be comfortably telling the story.
Right.
And
if
if you are not, if you can put yourself behind it and say, like, well, I'm doing this for me. Everyone says, like, well, that's the most honest artist. That's the person that I want to relate to. If I'm actually, you know, putting on a Marilyn Manson face or something like that and deliberately trying to upset you, there's a certain audience for that too. But, like, you know, who do you want to appeal to? Is it everybody or just a small amount? There's nothing wrong with either one, but.
Well, and that honesty as a metric of quality in your work. I feel like that's been part of the discussion for a really long time. So it makes sense that making space for myself to be more open and vulnerable is resulting in work that other people actually can connect with, even as it feels more personal to me. Because I think before I was, and, you know, this is the tendency I'm still fighting off, is to control that interaction with my work is creating, well, it's creating a distance between the viewer and the work, and it's also not making room for the viewer. I'm mangling a lot of metaphors here, but you know what I mean.
I would say, like, there's a certain amount of there's ego involved too. There's times that you just want to show off, like, I know how to do something really awesome. When I'm, like, composing music, like, I'm like, sometimes I just get lost in myself, and I'm really being myself, and then I realize, like, the song's in, like, 6/13 with, like, a whole bunch of, like, 30-second notes in it, that's how I'm connecting these giant chord progressions, and, like, you're already bored about me talking about it. So if I play that for you, if it's not conveying the mood immediately, you're just listening to a prog rock album and you're going, like, boy, he really knows how to put together a really complicated piece of music. Like, that's not really what I'm trying to do. I'm really trying to make you feel something with the atmosphere that I'm trying to create. Right.
Well, and prog rock has its place, but emotion is not not where it is. Do you have anything to add, or do you want to move on to commentary?
I think we go to commentary.
Okay, let's move on to commentary. So last week I was sick, and the week before that we had a sound failure, so we did not get to talk about 3 videos that we thought were fairly important. So today we're going to talk about those. And then we're going to talk about this week's video a little more that we already started to talk about in Homeschool Film School. But let's kick things off with our history dinner with friends.
Oh, yeah.
This was originally planned for our Thanksgiving special. So right now it's not named that for the SEO because nobody's looking for Thanksgiving in April. But if you watch it with an eye towards what American Thanksgiving is, it's pretty obvious. There's a lot of references to turkeys and American history. And so that was our attempt at a holiday video. And it was a lot of fun to make, actually.
This was, correct me if I'm wrong, the first real piece that we were really wrote and got people, actors.
Yeah. We asked a group of our friends to come and read some, like, fake facts about American history.
From our perception that we would think it would be funny if we saw it through Chinese eyes. Like, what would they think?
Right.
our
I mean,
traditions.
that's
It's not their ideas.
especially as an English teacher in China, having to teach some American holidays or Western holidays. It's usually American though, which is weird when the other teachers are not American. But that the Chinese want to know like what Americans do. That there's always some kind of lost in translation mangling of like what's actually going on, and the same thing happens vice versa for how we experience Chinese holidays or other cultural holidays. Of like we get the headlines and sometimes they're a little bit off, and it is also they can be completely right, but if you describe what Christmas is and the secular sense of a big fat man in a suit comes down your chimney, and then if you're bad he gives you coal and he puts stuff in socks over the fireplace, and if you zoom out too far nothing makes sense. So this was kind of
right. You have like a decent amount of a joke that we all laugh about in the West, but when you actually have to sit there and seriously come up with some kind of reason for why we're doing something, you start to realize how absurd it is. So like even like with just Easter passing, like you came home and you're like, yeah, we did Easter in class today, and I was like, Easter? Wait, what day is it? What are we doing with Easter here? That's non-Christian. What is? I mean, we eat rabbits here for but we eat rabbits just like as a regular dinner thing. Like, what are they? What are they hunting for eggs? Or are they putting them?
It's chocolate.
It's chocolate.
That's what the Easter boils down to, is chocolate. But yeah, so it was fun to write these jokes for them, and then they were so game. Some of them did not really speak English, and like they practiced way harder than I would have expected them to. I kind of was like, we'll toss this out. You'll phonetically copy what I say, and we'll get it on film of you saying that thing, and like then it's good to go. But they I would say spent a good half an hour with each other practicing their lines so that they could deliver them really well.
They went over the notes. They wrote on the notes. They consulted with each other. And
it was also helpful too because my friend Jessie actually has very good English, so she was kind of like the second director on of English, and she was trying to like make sure she actually even understood all the jokes, which is really hard. It's hard to understand another language's jokes. But the fact that she would
translate the jokes to everybody else, and everyone would be like, "Oh, okay." So
but the fact that they thought they were funny was like, "Oh, that's good."
Explaining like, just one quick spoiler of a joke, like, the Americans eat mashed potatoes because all the forefathers had wooden teeth. I mean, it sounds like an absurd thing to say, but it actually is kind of practical in that sense. To describe it that way, they were like, "Oh yeah, of course."
I think they were like, "Is that true?" And is it? I don't know. It might be true. If you had wooden teeth, you'd have to be careful about what you ate.
Sure.
And we did not have good dentistry.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was a lot of fun to put together, and big public shout out to all of them. They were like, they went above and beyond what I thought they would do.
Yeah, and it was at our favorite restaurant, and so it was a really fun production to put together.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I did at some point say we cut a bunch of lines and cut early because it was like, we want to end while everyone's still having fun and not fun and challenged and not challenged and frustrated, because I want them to remain my friends.
Right.
So.
We didn't pay them for their services, but we bought them dinner.
We bought them dinner. But it was like, and that's, I think, a valuable production skill, especially when you're not paying people, especially when you're working in indie productions, is like, read the room and see when people are going to start revolting. Or they get hungry. You need the goodwill of people to get your production, keep your production moving. But yeah, so that was a lot of fun. It has history dinner. The entire video features a good couple of animations that were... We had just bought the stylus, I believe.
Yep. There's the animations. There's some other things, but it was all all themed with eating. There's the chopsticks piece, so
yeah.
we can kind of juxtapose Western and Eastern.
Yeah. And it was... Oh, and then that was Which Spoon Do I Hate is in that one.
Yep.
Which is an interesting... That one, it's a very short piece, but actually was like really technically challenging to figure out how to film it. And it was one of our first... because we wanted to get like a top-down shot. And so what we ended up doing was we have a pole to put up to hang our laundry to dry on our porch. Mm-hmm. That's really long, and we have bought a piece of equipment to do this without jerry-rigging it. But so we took 2 tripods and put them on either side of the table, and then just had the laundry pole, and then I think we like with a scarf tied the iPad hanging above the scene. So it was like, hammock. Don't touch anything or it's all gonna fall apart. But it was my first experience with like writing something that does not actually have any dialogue in it, writing a concept rather than a story. And it was neat to like see the work that goes into that kind of filming. Mm-hmm. And we're hoping to do more of that kind of thing too. But it is like when you think of shows, I can't like Mr. Show or different generally comedy skits that have different interstitials of like like just even stupid jokes. Even the stupidest joke has to be written and filmed and like figured out, which is
a lot of what we were talking about at that time was Sesame Street.
Yeah,
and the trying to find the continuity between disparate pieces is it's an art in itself, and a lot of those pieces are the bug segment that we did is a good example of like this is a transition piece, but that took a bunch of planning, a bunch of writing. You had to write all the cards for it.
Yeah.
You had to get the bug animation together. That took us all afternoon to film it. It's good because it'll last for a while.
Yeah.
But, it's a production.
Yeah, it is an actual production. And it is like every little idea that you see on TV or film, someone had to think of that and do that. So give me a new appreciation for interstitials. Anything else about that one?
No, that's pretty good.
Okay. Let's move on to Why Do You Live in China?
Oh, yeah.
Which was originally conceived of as What Are You Doing in China? And this comes from... So there's a tendency, especially where we live in Sichuan province in southern China, where the language is very forceful. The way people speak with each other is very loud, and like a mark of if your dinner party is going well is because everybody's shouting and being very loud, and just like the speaking is very, I can't overstate this, it's very aggressive.
Especially here in Sichuan.
Yeah, my mom, when she came to visit us a couple years ago, she saw 2 ladies just chatting. And the manner in which they were addressing each other, she was like, are they having a fight? And it's like, no, that's just how people talk to each other here. And when that gets translated into English, when some people, when they learn English, they bring that manner with them. And this is, of course, not everybody. But there is a very abrupt way to the way some people speak English here. And so it can manifest in, what are you doing? And it sounds very accusatory, even though the intent, and we know it, that the intent is not, not accusatory.
Sometimes it's like very, like it was really striking in the beginning when we first got here, and it still hits us now and then, but like when you're new to a country and like you're teaching a class in front of 60 kids and you're setting up class and you're dry erasing the board or something, and a kid walks in and says, what are you doing? I mean, it's obvious I'm erasing the board. I mean, What do you think I'm doing? Like I'm offended. I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm
and it's just small talk. I can hear people in Chinese ask each other, and he's like, "Ama." And that just means, what are you doing? But it's not like they're not accusing you of anything. But the way
it can be a gentle dinner out with friends, and you go to eat something. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I was just getting a drink of water. Should I not have?
Yeah. So
have I offended?
This video was to like address that feeling of being constantly examined. While also admitting that sometimes what we're doing, specifically as Emily and Peter, but also just as foreigners in China, is sometimes a little weird.
No, it's especially vloggers all over, even in your own hometown, are always saying, like, oh, I feel so strange. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to get out there and walk around town with your camera and be, hey, look at me, I'm here. Oh, everyone's looking at me. Everyone thinks I'm really strange. You do it in a different country, and you're the only white face that a person might see all day long. So they're like, oh, look at her. Wait, what is she doing?
Yeah.
Usually, it's not, it's no big deal. But it is something to look at, so it becomes something you're very conscious of.
Yeah. But even, so one of the what are we doings is I'm laying in the bottom of our empty swimming pool, and my friend, Jessie, who's interviewed in a couple of our episodes, she follows us on YouTube, and she sent me a screenshot, and she, what are you doing? And it's like, I'm just laying in the bottom of her pool, like you do, which is, dirty and gross, I know. So that was a fun one to make. And it just consisted of going around and grabbing these weird shots all week.
It's a good example of us just describing now what the reasoning of our idea behind that is. You could say, could that be more successful? I mean, because a lot of people seem to watch it and be like, what is this? Why am I watching this? What are you doing? Why do I care about this kind of idea? Because it doesn't have the context of what you just described of you're constantly being asked as a foreigner, what are you doing aggressively? So it's always in our head, what are you doing? What are you doing? If we were able to figure out how to do that included some kind of information that a Westerner could look at it and be like, wow, that must be really strange to have people continuously asking. Whereas I think what it comes off from is just like, we're just being weird for weird's sake.
Right, that's where I disagreed with you in our discussion this morning, because I think as an artist, that's a piece of art and it's meant to stand on its own. That's the statement we wanted to make. And I feel like this discussion we're having after the fact is valuable and additive, but it's like if I wanted to just address to you, if I did, the statement I just made about feeling examined, I didn't want to just say that and have that be the primary work. We wanted the primary work to be this slightly strange video where maybe you don't understand the full meaning. And I kind of think, getting back to what I was saying before about making space for the audience to make their own meaning, something like that, and this is only comparing, I'm not comparing fake this week's video to Why Do You Live in China? I'm comparing Why Do You Live in China to the podcast discussion of Why Do You Live in China? Like the work is the work, and that is the statement we intended to make. And I think that as a piece of work is more valuable than the supplemental information. The supplemental information might help you engage with the piece itself, but I don't like. It's not. It's not my intention to hold everybody's hand and explain. what are you doing? Like, I think you can bring your own interpretation to that piece and feel that it's successful or not successful.
Right.
But I don't feel like you should need to have the story behind it. But again, on the podcast, I am willing to share the story behind it.
Right. Well, the problem, and it's not a problem, as an artistic expression, is it's successful. And I love it. I think it's a great piece. It's just that as soon as that's over, salesman me has to hit and go like, okay, what's the SEO on this?
Right.
What's the thumbnail? What markets what subreddits am I gonna have to go into and describe this, and how I'm gonna describe this without any kind of context? So there's a salesperson that like, you got to appreciate that guy out there, because you're making his job a lot harder.
And I do. I really appreciate that you do that work. And I'll be full disclosure, I don't do any of that work. And Peter does it all.
I'll be more than happy when we can hire somebody to do that work, because
Yeah.
I barely have a handle on it at all. It's only like through working commercially with salespeople that I once I make something and I give it to the salesperson and they're like, oh, come on, why are you making my life so hard? Having had a lot of relationships with people like that, I can see like, okay, how could I make this easier? Like, but do you want to make art easier? That's not a good place to go.
Right. So that's a challenging, and I feel like, especially because we're just on YouTube making work that we want to make, we're allowed to cross that line any which way we want to. And right now we're making work that's a little more narratively straightforward, but we're not limited to only that, and which, that's our prerogative.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, we have interests in everything. We want to do something mainstream. We want to do something really way out there. Like, it's all about trying to figure out. That's why each of our videos is so hard to describe, because they're all a little different, because every video we're trying to learn some new aspect of storytelling, whether it's through narrative, through visuals, through sound. Everything that we're trying to do is a new experiment, so that we can hopefully eventually find a voice that makes us something that you can discern between us and however billion other vloggers are out there.
Yeah. I will say that something that was a challenge that we did have to back off of making videos like this is because it did take a long time to put together all these shots. And it was more time than I was really able to spend on production of a video like this, which makes me sad. And as a direct result of that, I actually negotiated my contract with my day job so that I work less hours now for the same rate of pay. And that, I think, it's a well-known secret of day jobs and working as an artist, is like the more time you can grab back from your day job, that's going to work out better. So I'm extremely lucky to have people who are going to work with me in that regards. And so now I do have more time to devote to production heavy storytelling, which is the direction we want to go, I think.
Right. When you look at that, it was 6 minutes and 24 seconds that video clocks in at, and I don't have a job, and you work slightly less than a 40-hour week job. It's more than a part-time job, but less than a full-time job.
It's not close to 40 hours. It's more like 20 hours.
Right. So, given that, it still took weeks of preparation to put in 6.5 minutes worth of work to put out. That at this point 146 people may or may not watched parts of it.
Right.
So you do have to figure in these logistic parts of like, how much of your week can you, I mean, we've done everything we could, moved on to the other side of the planet so that we could afford to do 6.5 minutes of material one week. And even that is like, it's a lot of work. I mean, we're not stopping doing it, but we have to find out a better way to make sure that we can actually fit that stuff into, because there's only so many hours in a week.
Yeah, well, and for video making, definitely don't look at the minute per minute breakdown.
Yeah.
That's just going to be so discouraging. It takes a lot of work to make even a small segment, which we have next week. We'll have more to talk about on that.
Ooh,
on that
enticing.
But yeah, so why do you live in China? It was a really fun video to put together, and I'm really proud of how it came out. But it also was, at that time, we didn't really have the time to be making videos that were that big in scope. But
Which was what about
now I do.
That was after Thanksgiving, right? So it's not like it was
Yeah,
that long ago.
It was in the fall.
Yeah.
Which, how is that? Oh,
Yeah.
it's because it doesn't matter. So let's talk about shower.
Oh yeah.
So shower is one that actually we made in February, but never posted until now because we were waiting for the right moment. But so to go over our timeline again, January or maybe the very end of December, we shut down the first channel, took all the videos down, and started reposting them again. And kind of Peter and I took that time to regroup, and we weren't actively making videos, but we were kind of talking about conceptually where we wanted to go next, and then started writing a few things to kind of try out a new direction. And shower was one of the experiments of, we wanted to kind of expand on the fictional scenes that we had been writing and push more towards that and away from vlogging so much. I remember now Peter is more and more regularly part of the show, but at the time I was like dying for another character to include in the action. And Shower does not have another character, but you're there in the background, I guess.
hand.
Yeah, your hand. I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
But so Shower is based on the very real premise that sometimes our water goes out. And so we wanted to see if we
Ripped
could...
from the headlines.
Yeah. We wanted to see if we could just make like a little farce, Busby Berkeley kind of silent movie comedy out of that fact. Because also part of it was fiction in general, but we also I wanted to look at how small of an idea can you still make into a scene?
And we don't have a smaller room than our bathroom.
Yeah, our bathroom is ridiculously small. We're not trying to represent all Chinese bathrooms. We've had other bathrooms. We have another bathroom that's better than that one.
Mm-hmm. Well,
we'll get to that. But yeah, so we wanted to see, especially, can I do physical comedy? A little. And part of that was, so I'm wearing my Wellington boots in the shower, and those tiles do get really slippery, so I did really have to be careful.
It's dangerous.
I'm still convinced that I will die in that bathroom. It's so poorly designed and slippery, and
well, if you watch the video, you can see that
it's made of obstacles.
The toilet is a squatty potty, so it's a hole, but that's right under the shower, so you almost essentially have to straddle the toilet.
Yeah.
Which is just a hole to shower.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And so, can we make that premise?
If the water goes out, how do you live in that situation? And it has enough times where we've had these ridiculous situations that we wanted to turn into.
Yeah. And
a comedy bit.
And, go check it out and see if we're successful or not.
Mm-hmm. We think it's funny.
Unexpectedly stirred up some controversy. And part of that, or maybe all of that, is because we did kind of cheekily title it How to Shower in China, which is
I've since changed it to My Shower in China.
Ah, okay. As well. Too late. But, so one person gave us a kind of negative review, but just like, she didn't like it. And amusing, but whatever, guys. Like, okay.
Well, she pointed out that happens in other countries.
Yeah. And that's our point.
It happened to us in New York City.
It's the universalities that have followed us to China is part of what we're trying to depict. But whatever. So, like, Yeah, you can not like the video. You can even tell us that you don't like the video. But one other commenter who had a name that indicated she is of Chinese heritage took offense. And we let the first comment stand because it was mostly like she didn't think it was funny and she told us so. And so we kind of responded like, oh, we're sorry you feel that way.
We didn't get defensive.
She intimated that she found it offensive.
Right.
So we tried to kind of explain where we were coming from to see if that helped. And then
that's inclusive. That we wanted to say that this is our experience in our shower.
Yeah,
and we've had this happen in our country.
And then she doubled down and just got really nasty. So we had to ban her from the channel, which, I mean, I don't like hearing the criticism of like this isn't very funny, but you know that's you're allowed to think that. You're allowed to tell us that. But you're not allowed to then call us names and say some... She said some pretty nasty things. So.
Yeah, well, when we spend so much of our time looking at what we're trying to say in a way that is not from our hearts, but also from our lips, trying not to be offensive, and then to be jumped on, it's just nothing but offensive, and I'm not hearing anything but that, it's like... We really tried. Like, could you meet us halfway and talk about it, not just immediately, like, tell us to leave the country.
And then there was also, like, at a certain point, I can't defend it too strongly because it's a very silly idea.
It's totally and either Charlie Chaplin.
You're not into it, and you let us know you're not into it.
That's cool.
Oh, now you're not into us as human beings. Well, that's not a conversation we're gonna have, and I'm not gonna go to the mat for flailing around in the bathroom.
And it's not like it's new to us. Of like we've never been on the internet before. Like we know that this happens to everybody. We've followed trolls attacking comedians, sometimes even rightly so, or other trolls attacking trolls. Like we know how it all works.
People are mean on the internet.
Yeah. It's just the first time we actually had it pointed right at us.
And it was surprising that it was this video.
Yeah, of all things.
So...
The dumbest thing that we've done.
Dumb, yeah. But so that, like, is kind of a bummer that we were really excited about this new direction of storytelling that, like, struck a nerve that this girl was not happy.
Yeah.
But... We banned her, and the video's still up.
Yeah.
And it did pretty well, actually.
Well, that was kind of the point of naming it How to Shower in China, was to see, because we're really careful with our SEO of, like, not trying to put any kind of clickbait, as you know, or at least tamper down as much as possible. So it was like, well, let's see if we're not actually telling you how to. It's a farce. It's a joke on like how to. Don't shower like this in China. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
also, how to shower in China is the same way you shower anywhere else.
Right. Put water on body.
Yeah.
But to test that out and see like, well, what if we just go with the joke of making it clickbait, and like instantly in an afternoon we got like 250 views. Mm-hmm. So we're like, okay, so that's what people want to click on. Like, if you had a problem with it, you shouldn't have clicked on it to begin with.
Right, but so it is also, this is the second time we've gotten somewhat burned by making a title more provocative than it needs to be. And the first time that person was we actually had a good discussion, and I think, came to an understanding. And then, so, but I think in general, like making these provocative titles is a double-edged sword in that it will get you more attention, but some of that attention is angry.
Yeah, then we had to spend, it got us a ton of views. If we kept doing this, maybe we could have 600 subscribers now a couple weeks later.
Yeah.
Because it happens ridiculously that fast, especially if we start making the clickbait actually pay off with something awful inside. But just from that little thing, we ended up feeling awful for 2 days. Not that we felt guilty that we did anything wrong, but just being having to think about oh my God, this person was upset and then said bad things to us.
Yeah.
I don't want to live that way.
Yeah, and even having to consider, like, is she right? Do we deserve these bad things that she's saying to us? Like, no, she's being mean.
Right, but you can't get that out of your head once you're just like, was I wrong?
Yeah.
Crap.
Yeah. But the filming itself was pretty fun.
Oh yeah. Awesome video. Super proud of the music, this Baroque kind of goofiness that that took a hell of a lot of work to put together. It's maybe the first real score that I've ever put together that is timed exactly to the joke. Like with the song itself is fun, doesn't make as much sense if you're not watching the video, and vice versa. If you watch the video, it's just kind of you silently splashing around. So the music is the dialogue for it. So there's a lot of pride that I have in that for putting it together.
Yeah, so it's a fun video. Go
awesome.
check it
Watch
out.
it.
Learn how to shower. And then, so that brings us to I Know That It's Fake, which is our new video from this week. And this, I feel like it's a transitionary video.
It's one of 3.
Yeah, it's one of 3 that I'm trying to think where to start on this. Okay, so we 3 weeks ago filmed some footage that, because of the lighting, didn't come out well and was not a video that you'd want to watch looking all like that. And there was some...
We bungled the production.
Yeah, we bungled the production, and there was processing Peter could do to it to make it look stylized rather than a mistake, but it still, as a full video on its own, didn't look very good. And so then we came up with... for the following week, I wrote enough ideas for 2 more videos. And we had 3 more of these February fiction experiments that we didn't have a place for. So we decided, let's put all this material in a pile. We think we have enough for 3 episodes, and so let's put this all out as 3 episodes from this one pile of material, and including some of the stuff we shot over the fall, that stuff like the bug or the dancing clips, or even some of our interviews that are kind of, we're almost at the end of them, and we're going to need new material anyway. So this is kind of like, if something like Why Do You Live in China was season 2 and the Giraffe is season 3, this is like season 3.5.
Something. Essentially what we're doing is, in these 3 episodes, we're taking everything that we've learned from episode 1 to whatever, episode 93.
Yeah.
Everything that we've learned, and through this on this channel and on the music channel, Western Toilet, taking everything from all those videos, and we're compressing them diamond-like into these 3 episodes. The first one being out, the next 2 could come out.
Yeah. And
leftover material, new material, the giraffe, basic vlogging, outdoor vlogging, man on the street, interviews, everything that we've done, that we've learned so far is in these 3.
Yeah, and going ahead from these videos, they'll probably not be too different in terms of like the structuring that we do. Maybe this is like the end of the prototype phase, maybe. Although we've thought that before, so
yeah.
But so yeah, these 3 videos, they don't really. Thematically, they're kind of addressing big existential issues of like what is reality, what is fake. But they're also meant to be kind of silly.
Yeah, a little bit like something like you said earlier. With we rewatched a lot of Mr. Show over the past few months. Like, it's there's a theme, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, stuck to that. It can wander.
Yeah, and I don't know. Can they see the cardboard behind me?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, we have we worked with little note cards, moved stuff around to make these 3 episodes all kind of.
Yeah, they didn't just fall off the table. They're composed pieces.
And then so they have a couple different components. One is like the giraffe host segments in studio segments. One is the interview segments, which, you know, you've if you watch our channel, you've seen them before. These are just more of those, the good tidbits that we have. And then we have these produced segments like the dancing and the bug. And then the centerpiece is this fiction piece that I wrote. And again, the idea behind them was trying to find, whereas the theme of this episode is reality and fakeness, and your relationship to objects in the world you live in is pretty big. Mm-hmm. These fiction pieces were conceived to be like very small detail daily life. And so this one was just about, what do you have for breakfast? And I will say they have an aspect to like public access, teaching you English, kind of practice your English kind of drama in that like the culture moments are so shoehorned into as expository dialogue in a way that's not completely graceful. But it was, I think, successful in that like taking us from a lot of what feels unwieldy about vlogging is like what kind of idea am I trying to tell? Am I trying to give you all of China in a 15-minute ramble? Whereas I want you just to see like what's it like to eat breakfast.
Right. You could just do like this is story time and sit on the end of your bed and describe what breakfast is in China and what it is to the West and how can we find West and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
We're not actors, and we both have an affinity to public access that is like, so it's sort of a homage, like it's not an embarrassment that like, hey, we can't act, but like, but it's a different way to tell the story. Like, I mean, yeah, if we had friends here in our little city that could act these out, it would be wonderful to actually put that together, but on an afternoon, we don't have that ability.
Yeah.
So this is a more interesting way, at least for us, to tell that story rather than just you saying like I went to the store and bought granola.
Yeah, well, and having that's the famous screenwriter's dictum is show don't tell, and so this was my beginning to attempt to figure out how to do that, because I have a lot of experience writing, but I don't have really any experience screenwriting, and so starting to figure that out. And the what
you're reading a book and everything.
Yeah, what drove these, and shower even to some extent, was I did a lot of research on the story circle, which is Dan Harmon, TV writer Dan Harmon's adaptation of the hero's journey, where it's all the beats of like reluctant hero gets called to action, doesn't want to go, but is convinced to go, goes through his trials, meets the goddess, blah, 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 blah. You can look it up. It's very famous. Most Hollywood things you watch are based on those ideas. And so it was, even in shower, I tried to
hit all those arcs.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, the water goes out and let's goof around. The water goes out and then like the trials happen in a specific way and it gets resolved through a series of steps that then bring us back to normalcy. And so, yeah, if you're interested in that, you can look up the story circle or the hero's journey. And
invaluable.
It's really changed the way I watch TV actually now.
It's dangerous to a point of like, if you don't want to know how the magic trick happens.
Yeah, then don't look it up. Just continue. Ignorance is bliss. But I think it adds interest. It has not ruined anything for me. But yeah, as Peter says, we're not actors, and you can see this one we have outtakes from in the cereal. Eating cereal, we have some outtakes where you can see like we're going like 2 lines at a time and cutting because we first of all, can't remember our lines, but also are not, like, acting them very well.
Well, I think it's important, the reason for putting that second blooper-ish, I mean, it wasn't really a blooper.
Yeah, it was just a behind the scenes.
Yeah, and it's just the raw footage without any cuts. Because it's cute with our neighbor hanging in the background watching what's going on and everything, but it was also important for us to show you the actual finished piece of, like, yeah, we're not actors. We barely have cameras to make this work at all. To show you actually how it happened is like a ridiculous farce of an afternoon on a picnic table in our little pavilion rotunda of our neighborhood.
Yeah, and originally our plan starting in February was I was going to write a bunch of these little scripts, and Peter and I would grab an afternoon here and there and film them, and then Serial was the last one we filmed of the 4, including Shower, and we just decided it's too hard. We're not going to learn to be actors. We're not good at that.
Not that we're stopping it.
Yeah, so that actually spun off into...
We might still torture you with them.
That has spun off into another writing project that I don't want to get too much into because it's baby.
Top secret.
Baby stages. But the plan for the vlog is not these pieces. So, but we are so proud of them, so we're happy to find a package to include them as part of in these next 3 episodes.
And where they might take us after.
Yeah.
So these 3 episodes are sort of sweeping up all the stuff that we've learned, that we've done up to this point, cleaning things up, and then how do we take this forward to be even more streamlined and
yeah, and it's kind of coincided with we filled up our old hard drive and bought a new hard drive, so there's like a feeling of like clean start, fresh start.
There is so much of, like, when you're talking about the artistic sense of things, a lot of times it actually comes down to something of like, well, that turned out well because the hard drive's full. The practical sense, or like I'm saying, like with the sales thing of like, well, once this is done, where do I post it?
Yeah.
How you move the product forward
is
something to think about from an artistic standpoint, as long as you're not obsessed with it, but.
Yeah, and I think...
Looking at the board behind you.
Yeah.
That's not you just fell into a can of paint and boy, it looked good when you swirled it all together.
Yeah, and then I think some of these structures, you can see them as limitations or you can see them as like guidelines. And that's, I definitely am glad to have the structure of, this season 3.5 and then what comes next. Won't look significantly different, but to us, we'll know there's a new underlying file architecture to how we're organizing our work. And so that's... Is there anything else to say?
I think that's of course, there's always something else to say. Like, do we have the time?
Yeah. Well, let's move on to Watch It.
Watch it.
Our Watch It this week is a movie that you can find on YouTube. The movie is called Doofuses, and the channel is called Fireplace. And Peter, you know a little bit more than I do. It seems to be a young man and his brother.
Yeah,
young man, like college age.
Yeah.
Hi, we're old.
They live in the Appalachian Mountains, I guess. So, I mean, I don't know much about them as people, but as a film.
As a film, it's about 2 young. The film itself, they have a lot of short videos, short comedy skits, right?
Yeah.
And the
not a lot. They're fairly new.
Okay, the film is about.
Congratulations on your 116. I see. Subscribers.
So let me describe the film. The film is a feature-length film about 2 brothers kind of having an existential crisis of
yeah. Well, it's hard without spoilers, but who are they and what are they doing?
They're trying to find their place in the world and how to relate to people with love in a world that is sometimes arbitrarily cruel and full of grief. And it's funny.
It's definitely
and
funny.
it's very touching. And if you watch the credits, it's a lot of their family name comes through the credits, so it's definitely like a family pulled together and made this movie with them, which is really cool. And what excited us both about this was to find on YouTube what seems like the inheritor to the 90s indie film movement that then just got subsumed into large corporations, and then now all we have is superhero movies.
Yeah.
And
we like superhero movies, but
yeah,
we love movies like this.
Yeah, and it's very, I would say, Wes Anderson appears to be an influence. A lot of mumblecore.
Yep. But not just random mumblecore. There's definitely written dialogue and bits that are well orchestrated. But there's a lot, especially like Wes Anderson stuff. There's a lot of staging shots that are the palette is there. The
geometry of a given frame is very precise. And it's exciting in a sea of YouTube. You know what YouTube is. In a sea of people trying to explain everything to you and or poop on trees. I don't know what
falling cats with
that to see like a real piece of art being made is like that's what the hope is, like, because the potential of a free distribution platform, if you can get your movie made, if you can get your piece of art put together, you can put it out there for everyone to see. And so why is everyone just reviewing
movies that like
why? Blockbuster movies like that? I don't care about that.
Right. And why are people watching them? Like, is it that there is just people don't want creative original material? I mean, there's all the problems now with I forget, whatever, Article 13. Yeah,
copyright infringement.
Right. Do we take away the memes? Do we take away people's right to use other people's songs? Whatever it is, like, why not make your original stuff? Well, because it's hard. But then why do people only want to watch stuff that's by other people?
Right.
It seems like a waste of talent. So.
But it seems it's a wasted opportunity. I mean, I understand why.
Yeah.
It is so much easier to reference a thing that people already know, but that's way less interesting than these two brothers' story. Which one of the brothers composes the music, I believe, and he's very talented at that as well.
He's a talented actor too.
Yeah.
I mean, they both are. Everyone in it is fun.
For an amateur production. It is like
it looks really good.
It looks really good.
Yeah, and it's written really well. I mean, there's the character, and we talked about it a bit. Like, is it possibly because they're brothers that the dynamic between the two works so well? But
it's
I think
very lived-in relationship.
But it also, I mean, it comes off on screen like these characters are easily interesting people that, like, the dialogue that they've worked on, whether it's just coming from, naturally being around each other all the time, it's still scripted stuff that it works pretty seamlessly in most parts, so that you can relate to the characters. And it is a world that does feel lived in. Like, you do feel like I've stepped into their world. And they're showing me this small house, this small relationship, this small town, but in the world of, like, oh my God, we're flying through space on a planet.
Right.
Like, holy crap, how do we deal with all this stuff? It's very small and intimate, and very huge existential. Again, without getting into the spoilers, go watch the movie. But it's big and small is my first thought. Even the way it's filmed, there's use of really tight shots,
Mm-hmm.
and then like we're saying, like with the Anderson stuff, like of just these really wide shots that are really hard to do on a little indie budget, because you start to lose characters or props or things like that.
Right.
When you have a big wide screen, this bounces back in and out of that in a way that's like, I know these people, and then like, wow, they live in a world.
Yeah.
And then I know
yeah,
them. And then,
yeah, and that's what you really hoped YouTube would be for. Is for people who are shut out of the mainstream system for whatever reason. I mean, there's not enough Hollywood for all of us to go.
And then sadly enough, this sometimes feels like there's not enough YouTube to go around because no one's looking for that. They're looking for a new review from the movie that they just got back from the movie theater watching.
Well, that's the problem with selling everything on SEO is like, what's the SEO for quirky independent movie?
Well, you can't. I was watching.
You can't look that up.
I was watching somebody last night was asking the idea of like, they write fiction and on YouTube and then they narrate it, and how do you SEO that? Like, you can't say the name of the book, you can't sell it on, like, you can use the cover of your thumbnail, but like you can't look up the cover of a thumbnail like you could walking through a bookstore or something like that. So you have to take the idea of whatever your story is, take away your clever title and write like, well, YL narrative literature for spooky suspense. Like, what kind of maniac is looking that up?
Yeah. But so yeah, it's a really beautiful little film. Not little.
Well, babe. It's won an award, some kind of Appalachian film festival thing, which is great. I mean, I don't know what that is, but like, that's really cool that people have recognized it.
Yeah.
And they also have a bunch of other films on here, the little shorts and bits that are also all very funny and promising, and there's music in there too now. It's a very exciting channel. Go watch it.
𝗣𝘵cie Fireplace. We'll link to them in the description, like always. But let's wrap it up.
Wrap it up with a closing?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah,
You're saying goodbye?
I'm saying noodles. I'm noodling.